The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting live from the UK and across the world online, you're now listening to the UK's only live alternative late-night talk show, and I'm Kevin Moore. For the next 3 hours, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On tonight's show, I'm joined by Elaine Smitha, who's a visionary teacher, artist, and a businesswoman. She'll be sharing her views, experiences, and knowledge into why the universe we are currently inhabiting is just not working. Ever since she healed herself in 1993 after neurotoxin poisoning from oil-based paint, her primary mission has been to introduce an advanced awareness, knowledge, and understanding of the body's capability to heal itself, and to encourage global cultures to live together in harmony. Elaine is here to share her views on why our universe is not working and her book, Screwing Mother Nature for Profit. Good evening, Elaine.
Well, good evening. Let me just correct my pronunciation of my last name. It's Smitha.
Smitha, right. I do apologize. Elaine Smitha, that's right.
All right.
Well, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on, and you're on a radio and TV show. Isn't this cool?
Yes, very cool.
So, whereabouts are you based in America, Elaine?
I'm in Olympia, Washington, which is the state capital of Washington State. And yes, it's a very nice community, not too far from Seattle, south of Seattle.
Okay.
About an hour and a half drive. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So a bit of background on yourself to begin with before we get into your work.
A background?
Yes, just tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Oh, well, it's varied. Well, let's see. I went back to university when I was some years ago to finish my degree. I'd only had 2 years of college earlier, and that was before I got married. Then I got married and had children, and it was after I had my children, my 4 children, that I actually went back to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, and finished my last 2 years, and then got a scholarship to go for my master's degree. And I did that in fine arts, and it was very wonderful to have that opportunity to do that. And I've been a jeweler, craftsperson, designer, manufacturer for a number of years. And then eventually I moved to Washington State, and I've been residing here ever since then. And I do television here. I've been doing television for a number of years, doing interview programs, just like what you're doing. And then I've also done radio on the Progressive Radio Network for about 10 years. So I'm a communicator. I love knowledge, love to learn new things, and love to share. And it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And it keeps the brain going, doesn't it, as well?
Yes, and that's a very important attribute, quite frankly, because you don't get dementia, you don't get any of this other disease of the mind and stuff. You stay alert, and it's very healthy for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, to get into your work, Screwing Mother Nature for Profits, do we care about each other as human beings enough to care about Mother Nature to begin with?
Well, since we are part of Mother Nature, excuse me, we really ought to be taking care of Mother Nature, taking care of ourselves, our bodies, the nature in which we live and survive, and all the food and so forth that we eat to keep us healthy. And it's a very high component. And certainly today, we are hearing more and more people talking about we need to take care of our planet, we need to do this, and we need to, watch our water, keep our water clean. I mean, it's been a big battle over that. And so it's very appropriate, very timely.
Yes, but do you think that we care about each other enough? That's my point. I mean, to care about... Go ahead.
Well, probably not. But we need to. We're surrounded by other human beings and animals and gardens and so forth, and food, our food supply. That's all very relevant. And well, yes, I mean, there's lots that go into this.
Yeah.
But yes, and I think the big corporations have done a lot of disservice to Mother Nature, and they just want the money that they can make off of all their their things that they get involved with. And actually, biology. I became very interested in biology, which I used for my first book, and became. That's why I went back to college and took 2 years of biology so I could better write my book about this. And that my first book is If You Make the Rules, How Come You're Not Boss? Minding Your Body's Business. And so when I did this one, Amit Goswami is a very wonderful human being here who's done a lot of work talking about consciousness and being conscious, and that's really part of everything. With Mother Nature, you've got to be conscious, number one. And so it's just one of these things that just sort of took me over. I have to tell you this, though. I'd be working mentally on this even when I was asleep, and I would get wakened up in the middle of the night with this mental message, it's time for you to write. And I would sit down with my computer, and it would just flow like I was transcribing it. It's the most amazing experience I've ever had.
I've heard of this before from authors like, for example, Neil Donald Walsh, where it was channeled through him, not actually from him. In a sense, it was just creative writing. Is that the same process for yourself? Would you say?
Yes,
Elaine?
exactly. I mean, I'm a touch typist, so I could easily type fast. Excuse me, as all this information was flowing in, and I'd write it all out, and then I'd look back and I'd read what I had written.
Yeah.
And I was blown away.
Yeah, where did that come from? Yeah.
Exactly, and I sit and I search I look around the ceiling, who's out there? Who did this come from?
So you sound like you're quite open-minded to some sort of that you would have said there's a higher self working through you to channel what you've done with your work. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So do you as well think, before I'm going to get into your work, but do you think this is a sort of if there was more women running the world, do you think we'd have such problems with Mother Nature being abused so much?
Well, that's an interesting. That's a very interesting position to take. Probably because mothers are nurturers, and we don't find that in many of the male population. So I just think that there would be more common sense about that.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. You'd like to think of that if women were in charge in certain situations, more that there'd be a bit more common sense and a bit more care to the. That's what I thought earlier on before the interview. I thought, well, is this a male problem? More. I mean, some of these corporations are very male-driven, aren't they, as well? And it's all about the buck. But I mean, when you don't consider Mother Nature and what you're doing to the planet, I mean, you're not really leaving it for the future generations, are you?
No, they're not conscious. These people who are so money hungry, they're not conscious of what they're doing. It's ridiculous. All they care about is money. I don't know how you can have a well-rounded life if that's your only goal.
Well, exactly. Well, and especially when it comes down to the planet. So, why are the big corporations a problem for Mother Nature? Would you say, Elaine?
Say that again?
Sorry. Why are, big corporations a problem for Mother Nature?
Well, because they're they're corrupting her. um, I mean, look at all the oil that comes out of Mother Earth. And look at we had over here in the Gulf of Mexico, we had that big oil spill. And they're still cleaning up after that. And lost a lot of animals and fish. I mean, it was devastating. And when all you care about is money, you are so warped in your viewpoint that you just they just ignore it. They leave it to somebody else. They'll hire a gardener. They'll hire somebody else to do it, but they won't do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at look at there's so many other ones. I mean, look at over here is one of the topics right now is fracking. There's a big concern over that as well. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Yes, well, we have fracking over here too, and it just upsets me terribly. And there's been organizations who are really trying to fight that. You cannot take the oil out of the ground like they're doing, and you can't, because it's a lot of space. And what's going to happen? I mean, I don't know. There could be the Earth could cave in where they're doing that. I mean, I just don't know. It's just going to be a very interesting future to see what does evolve out of that. It's how it's going to really affect Mother Nature and life and the life of animals and the sea creatures. And I mean, it's devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at some of our rainforests right now, I mean, you know, it's not covered so much in the news nowadays as it used to be. But I mean, how big of a problem have we got there as well?
Yes, rainforests. Well, if you don't have trees, you don't get rain. So that's why the Pacific Northwest has so much rain. People say, well, it rains a lot. Yes, well, it does, but we have forests. But then they went and they cut down a lot of those trees to build houses on that same land. And when I used to drive up there over the pass and out of Seattle, there used to be all these marvelous forests. And then when I drove back there a few years later, nothing but houses, just nothing but houses.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we don't have enough rain, then we're going to have other things that are going to be coming, winds and so forth. And I mean, we had power outages here. I think it was a couple of years ago, and nothing was working. Nothing was working because we had so much rain and a little bit of snow, but it was devastating. And it took a lot of people didn't have any lights. They didn't have any heat. And it took the companies several days to get things back up so they could live more normally. So, yeah, I think that these are all very big concerns that we all ought to be paying attention to.
I mean, you know, I remember when I was a little bit younger, the concern for the ozone layer. Yet you don't really, you know, it's not a fashionable thing to say nowadays, as such, is it?
No, you're right.
You know, I mean, is there still a problem there? I mean, I've never researched it, but I mean, is that still a growing issue? I mean, have we been able to, you know, stop so many emissions of toxics going, you know, and affecting the ozone layer?
I think they're trying, but it's really tough. You got to clean up the ground space before the ozone's going to clear itself out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how do corporates then become more? How have you helped to educate some corporates into you know helping out Mother Nature, or is it just impossible to even get across the door? Or are they not wanting to listen?
Face to face, no. I don't know. I just think that somehow we keep hoping they're going to wake up. I mean, there's plenty of articles now on the internet and in magazines and so forth about nature, and you know, I mean, they're trying, but I just think that the money group is so focused on their income and having the biggest house, the biggest lawn, whatever it is, that I don't know, their consciousness has to change. That's the only way it's going to happen. They have to wake up and say, wait a minute, we need to change our ways. And I mean, there have been some companies, but it's just really a struggle. It's a struggle. That's why I wrote the book, because I was so disgusted with these corporations and how they were behaving their stuff, And I didn't think that. I mean, they want us to believe them. Oh, they're going to take care of us and everything, and then they turn around and do all these naughty things. So it just bothered me a lot.
No, I've absolutely. I mean, I can imagine. And well, things like you mentioned there, the wars for oil. I mean, it's just forever ongoing, isn't it? I mean, when will it stop?
When we go to electric cars,
Yeah,
and they're working on that. They're working on that right now. And in fact, I just saw a thing on television the other night where they were demonstrating a new model that that works on some battery charge or something, some other energy component. But yeah, we have to quit taking oil and using that for all of our travel. But you see, they haven't been doing anything about that. They've just been taking all their profits and doing what they're doing, and eventually it'll all run out. Then what are you going to do?
well, absolutely. I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, that they've gave oil a lifespan of what? Gosh, what was it, 30, 40 years or less? We must be approaching some of the bigger wells drying up, but then they seem to find more as they drill deeper, but that can't be good for Mother Nature, can it?
No, they're going very, very deep down into that lower layer, and I just think that it's costing them a lot more money to drill that far down. But that's to me, that's desperation. They're just trying to hang on to their market. So I don't know. I mean, the Earth. There's talk about the Earth caving in where they're doing all that fracking.
Well, that's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. So they could just devastate whole communities by that.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know the people who live above those. I just don't know. They ought to move.
Well, there's been earthquakes that have
Yes.
been linked to fracking here in the UK.
Well, that's heads up, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, we're going to get more into the environment impact of corporate behavior just after the break. So, Elaine, stay tuned and we'll be right back.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the Moore Show website.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The Moore Show.
Welcome back to the show. I'm still currently joined by my guest, Elaine Smitha, who's a visionary teacher, artist, and a businesswoman. And she's sharing her views on her new book, Why Our Universe is Screwing Mother Nature for Profit. Elaine, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Now, just before the break, Elaine, we're going to get into some more corporate stuff. But do you view Mother Nature as being conscious? Yes.
Yes, it is conscious, and so because it's conscious, it knows what's going on, and it takes it models itself after trying to survive. No matter what is happening, it still wants to circumvent whatever the abuse is, so the nature can still survive. I mean, we're part of nature. Without nature, I mean, there is nothing.
Well, that's right.
Yes.
That's right. And we only have what is a very precious world to share. Yet we do not consider our... it just really gets in the way, doesn't it? And we don't consider what we're doing affects everybody.
Well, I think that there's a more consciousness happening, at least up here in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know about other places like Chicago and New York and Florida. I mean, it's just there's good things happening. I think we're started the movement here in the Pacific Northwest, and I think that in California, this whole West Coast, because they are seeing what's happening that's not in their best interest and not in humanity's best interest for us to survive this transition. So somehow they have to understand, people have to understand that what they're doing makes a difference. Everything they do makes a difference. And what we want to emphasize is we want to make a positive difference. So if they're making something that they're doing is not really supportive of Mother Nature and is counterproductive, then they need to stop and change their ways. And certainly, it seems to me that more people are more conscious of that. But I tell you, when money gets into that big play, it has a big footprint. And I just think that I think that if they had a personal experience themselves and they could see what they were doing and they had the effects of what they've done impacting their homes, their families, their businesses, then I think they would change their ways.
Do you think it could be as quick as that? It could happen in that moment. Yeah, that change could take place. I think you're right.
Well, it's nothing but a thought. You have a thought. You can have a thought, and all they have to do is think, "Oh my gosh, what are we doing?" And some corporations are waking up to that, and they're aware, but not all of them. The big ones in the big cities, I think they take longer.
Well, let's get into recycling then. Do we recycle enough as corporates?
Well, recycling here in the Pacific Northwest, it's a big thing. We have a lot of recycling areas here where we can recycle all kinds of things, and they have great big what you might call like a railroad car about that size, and they have these what we call the dump, but it's a recycling center. And people will take their jars, their bottles, their newspapers, magazines, tin cans, all these kinds of things that they take, cardboard boxes, and they take all those things over there. We voluntarily go over there and just, throw them into the bin so they can be recycled. And so it's a huge move. And Washington State is big on this. I can't really speak for California, but it's been a number of years since I've been down there. But here in the Pacific Northwest, it's a big, big thing. So and you just don't throw so much stuff away. And now that we have computers, the mail service has diminished enormously. So I used to have a mailbox at the post office where I would gather all my papers and stuff. But now so much of it is done online with emails, and that the post office some of them are closing up because they don't have the business that they used to have, and they can't pay all their employees. So they're not hiring. So I think that there has been a big impact on the communities as a result of that.
Well, when it comes to corporate disposal, then let's move this forward to things like electronic equipment, monitors, computers. I mean, these are contain quite toxic metals, for example. I see programs on my TV in the UK, dispatches or something like that, where they're following what should be recycled material going to a proper recycled procedure, yet ending up in some part of Africa.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, have you heard of stuff like that going on, or?
Not too much. I haven't. That's an interesting position, to bring that forward. They probably are shipping things down there just to dispose of them, but they keep making products that are not really compatible with the right kind of recycling.
Right.
So some companies are changing the composition of their materials so they can be more accommodating. I think because there's been an uproar, people are protesting and they're not buying some of these products because, it's not recyclable. And now they even on some of the cartons, they'll put this carton is recyclable. So, in some ways they're beginning to help in that regard. And because I think the consciousness is what's making the difference. I think the more that we protest and we just tell these companies we're not buying your product because then if they get enough of that, they're looking for profits. So if they can't sell it, they're going to change their ways.
Well, absolutely.
That may be our saving grace, as a matter of fact.
Well, isn't it amazing what people power can do sometimes? Peaceful people power.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, you see that everywhere, don't you?
Yeah. So I'm very conscious of it myself. I mean, I always recycle as much as I possibly can, and I don't mind loading up the back of my rig and taking it up there to the dump. I mean, it's amazing. People they're up there all the time when they open and when they get ready to close. I mean, people are in this area. I would like to think that it's global, but I don't think so.
No, I mean, obviously developing countries as such, obviously, that they're a little bit behind the pace of progress where, countries like yourself and England are, but they will catch up
eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually, especially when people stop buying their products, and some people were even sending their products back to the companies, or they were writing letters and they were saying, I'm not going to buy this anymore if you don't change your ways. I mean, the public has quite a voice. And because these corporations behave according to how their constituencies appreciate them. So it's a matter of being vocal. It's time for us to wake up and be vocal and say, we're not going to buy this because of whatever, you don't like this. You don't even like the ingredients in the product, and we change that. I mean, there's all kinds of vocal stuff. And I think with the internet, it has been very instrumental in assisting this.
That's incredible, isn't it? What the internet's done by bringing people together in that sense, but also it is common sense stuff from people like yourselves, Elaine, who are re-educating people. I mean, education is part of the process, isn't it, as well?
Yes, it is. Education is part of that process. And one of the things I did when I bought my property here in Washington State is I live in the woods, so I don't have any garbage pickup. We have big trucks, that go down the road and pick up garbage. People put their bins out there and they'll come and pick them up. And I decided I wasn't going to do that because I'm too far from the road. So that's why I recycle everything. So, and I have a area way and I just stuff stuff in there until I get a lot. And then I take it up to the dump and I put it in the recycling bins right where they need to go to be recycled. And for me, it's a way of life, and I have a lot of friends who do the same thing. And I think that, they're always busy up there at the dump. I mean, always. And so people are conscious about that. And I just think that the more that happens, the more we're helping to save the planet. So I would like to think so anyway.
Absolutely, Elaine, absolutely. And let's move this forward then a bit. Let's go to the topic of atomic energy and the byproducts that can neither be recycled nor destroyed. Not very good, is it?
No, it's not very good at all. I don't know. There's people that are just they're not as awake and not as conscious, I'm sure, as your audience is and as my friends and so forth around here. I just think awareness is the key. You just have to wake up and say, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm changing my ways. And I know there are people here who don't buy certain products until the companies change their packaging. And that's made a big difference. And because of that, there's been more, I would say, more conscious creation of products that don't use those things that cannot be recycled. So I think that when people stop buying those things and the things that cannot be recycled, then the companies change their ways.
But when it comes to the atomic energy as such, I mean, we know where we get our electric. What it feeds a number of things, but you've only got to look at when disaster strikes, like in Japan, for example, when they had the
Fukushima,
the tsunami, was it the tsunami as well?
Tsunami.
well, look what a problem it caused. I mean, it will, and it's still an ongoing issue as well over there.
Yes.
I'm sure their governments aren't telling them even now the full truth on the what we call the fallout from that disaster. What is the alternatives? I mean, to powering our electric grids, because obviously here in England as well, a lot of our grids are powered by nuclear as well.
Yes, well, there's solar energy. That's a big one. They're putting these panels on houses to catch the light, and it's actually powering their house. If we can get that into automobiles, then that's going to help a lot. So, there's just creative thinking is happening, I think, because we're becoming more conscious of what we're doing, and customers are saying, I'm not buying that anymore, and therefore the companies are having to change. And I think that's a good sign, a very good sign. And if we, up here in the Pacific Northwest, we don't have very many solar panels on houses because usually we have so much rain, it's not worth it. But in California, for sure, the southern states where they get a lot more sunshine, that's a big item for them. But what I did for my own house now, so it's happened a few years ago, but my roofing on my house was leaking. I bought the house. It had been, occupied by others before me, and so it started leaking. The roof started leaking, and I said, I am not playing this game. And that was when I learned about steel on steel roofing, and I've had that put on now, so it will never rot. It will never have a hole in it. It will never catch on fire. It's actually it keeps everything just fine because it's a steel on steel roof, and so that was one of the things that I did to my own property to better accommodate the energy usage and to cut down on a lot of the expense that would have been incurring before.
Yeah, and that's a really great idea. So what you're sort of hinting at there is for economically viable living as well. The way that we when we do our houses up and things like this, we should be looking at the much longer picture, which is what you've done as well.
Yes. Well, if you've got a roof that lasts you 30 or 40 years, that's not bad.
That's pretty good, Elaine. Yeah, I know. I really do like what you've done there, and
yeah. And another thing that I did when I bought this house was they had all single pane windows in it, and not very many windows, and I was claustrophobic, and so what I did was that was one of the first things I did along with the roofing thing, but I had double pane windows put in, and even my front and back door are all glass, double pane glass. So that insulates the house, but gives me the light that I need. And that's another really marvelous way to sort of have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah. Your water supply there, I mean, is water something very important to you? Where it's coming from? Is it clean? Is there any toxics in it?
Well, I have my own well. I drilled my own well. That was another thing I did when I bought the property because I wanted control over my well and the water supply. And because I was sharing my water with my next door neighbor. It was a single well, which is on my side of the property, but it was such a small well. And if she ran out of water, and she'd call me up, or she'd come over and she'd say, "Did you use all the water?" And I said, "No, I didn't tell her that I had already drilled my own well." I said, "No, I've drilled my own well." And she says, "Oh, I guess Dave took too long a shower." So they were not conscious of the sea. They were blaming me.
Yeah, like, it's straight to blame you for that when it was them in the first place. But
Right.
so I mean, obviously drilling your own well. I mean, I mean, because you've looked into the sort of the amount that they sort of toxic materials they must dump into the oceans and the waters every year. I mean, it's a big problem, isn't it? Still.
Well, it is. Things are still washing up on the shores. I do think, though, that that these companies, there's been so much protestation. I think that they have are changing their ways. That one oil drilling company, I've forgotten the name of it right now, but anyway, they were out in the ocean and they were dumping all this stuff from their drilling just back into the oceans, and then they had this big event happened when they had fouled their own ship.
Yeah.
And when that happened, then they became very conscious of what they had done to the ocean, and then they almost drowned because the ship almost went down, and they were rescued. But I do think that all these events have an effect, and it's a matter of waking up and realizing that what they're doing is not healthy for the planet. And I do think there's a lot more awakening in that regard.
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, the poor wildlife that's affected from, you know, sort of water dumping as well, it must cause a lot of problems in you know, from transmission of diseases to species as well, I would have thought.
Well, sure. I mean, if you have a water supply and you have rain, and rain is contaminated with acid, then the wildlife suffers because they can't survive drinking acidic water. So that's happened in some of the forests and some of the third world countries and so forth. And I do think that there's been such a hullabaloo about this that these corporations are beginning to change their ways. They really are. You know, one of the most interesting things that I had experienced in my life was taking a trip to Papua New Guinea, which is one of the most primitive cultures on the planet, and being in their area there, going into their tribal communities, and they were still wearing ass grass and leaves and stuff like that. I mean, they were very, very primitive, still living in their huts that they'd built. And but they are also very conscious about the environment, and so they were making a difference in their own communities about their own usage of cutting down trees and trying to preserve things. And so they're learning a new way to survive in this milieu of new thinking. I think that's the way I could put that, is new thinking.
Well, okay, Elaine, stay right there, and we're going to be back right after this quick break. Don't go anywhere.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The Moore Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The Moore Show.
Welcome back to the final part of the show. I'm joined by Elaine Smitha, who's a visionary teacher, artist, and a businesswoman, and we've been discussing her book, Screwing Mother Nature for Profit. Elaine, just before the break there, we were discussing, sustainable drinking water. What's your views on bottled water then?
Well, that's a good alternative if you don't have a good water system, because these companies are having to have clean facilities and so forth. It's viable if you don't have good water, but better off to live someplace where you do have good water. But I mean, it's a waste of the worst thing about the bottled water are the plastic bottles.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, it has to go back into a recycling system, and that's what we have here at our place where we can take our things for recycling. But I don't throw any of that away. I am so conscious of this environment that I recycle everything that's not edible. And that's the only way I know to go about this, is to become conscious of your own uh, living continuity, health wise. When you take care of yourself, you save an awful lot of money. You don't get caught up in that healthcare system, which can, I mean, right now they are milking everybody and it's just too much. They're treating people for all kinds of things that don't need to be. I mean, I just think it's too much. And I have a naturopathic physician, and but I take really good care of myself. I drink. You need to drink 8 to 10 glasses of water a day because the body requires it. And if you get in the habit of doing that, that helps to keep you well. And the water, if you have good water, hopefully you don't have to buy bottled water. You can have it in your own tap. But even then, there's filtering systems and so forth that I used in the very beginning that you can use. You look into this. I don't know what you have in your country, but I'm sure that they've got some kinds of methodologies for doing that. But I carry bottled water every place with me. It's in my car. I have a bottle I keep in my purse. And I just have my water. I just have to have water. You really need to have that water in order for all of the cells in the body, the 50 to 70 trillion cells you have in your human body, keeping them happy and lubricated. And that keeps everything functioning in your body. That way you don't have any side effects from doing that. And it saved me a lot of money. I don't go to the doctor. I take care of myself, and I don't go. I just when you begin to take charge of your life, and you realize that, excuse me, that you're the ones in charge. You have the brain. You have the mind. It's your body. You've had it since you were born, and it's up to you to take care of yourself. Well, when you do that, then you're also helping the environment, because you're not utilizing things that aren't really healthful for you. I can remember when the bottled water was just about to emerge, but the grocery store had put in a big dispenser on the outside of the store where people could come and buy water, get it out of their machine. And I thought, this is crazy. Look at all the plastic bottles. I mean, this has got to be ridiculous. And I was living in California at the time, and we didn't have our own well there. And so that was the only way you're going to get what we thought was clean water. So you end up getting the bottled water, and then you got all these plastic bottles to dispose of. Or you get some kind of a container that you can recycle it. You keep using it over and over, in which a lot of companies did come out with water bottles that would keep it cold or whatever, but you could drink out of that, and then you go fill it back up. And so that was one of the things. This is all kind of over the years. This has been emerging. So, but if you drink 8 to 10 glasses of water a day, you will stay so healthy. And that means you cut down on your healthcare costs, doctor's visits, drugs, all that kind of stuff. And it's amazing.
Okay. Well, I've got to say, you do look really healthy. So I think what you're saying, you're living by as well. And well, we've kind of skirted on this issue, but where do you see the planet in the future if we don't change our ways?
Oh, if we don't, we're going to have a lot of deaths. You're going to have life is going to be very, very, very different. If you don't have water, if you don't have good food to eat, I mean, a lot of these tribes, in the third world countries, I mean, they're actually having to move into different ways of doing things too. And I think you have to wake up to the fact that the world has changed. You're in it still, and it's your responsibility to do what you can to make things better. And if we could just get the corporations to think that way, we'd be in much better shape. So respect the land, respect your body. It's all nature. And I don't know, I just have a hard time understanding why human beings behave the way they do and how these big corporates.
Well, that was my point earlier on, Elaine. I mean, it's this whole thing that we see ourselves disconnected. We don't see ourselves as connected to each other. So therefore, why should we care? Yet, if you understood the principle, or I'm not preaching to you here, but just from where I'm coming from, that perhaps we are all connected at a much deeper level than what you do to another, you do to yourself.
Well, energetically, yes. Energetically. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes. Well, again, we get back to our thinking processes because that's affecting our choices, and we're gifted. Humanity is gifted with a brain that works. It's amazing. I think the human body is a marvelous machine, and we do have to take care of ourselves. And the fewer drugs you take, because you're taking water, you're drinking 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. What I used to do, I'd take some popcorn kernels and I'd have 2 little cups out in the kitchen, and I would, every time I took a glass of water, I took one of the popcorn kernels and put it in the other cup so that I could always keep track of how much water I was drinking every day. That was how I trained myself. So, and I think that being conscious of what you're doing to your environment where you live, and I don't know, I hope we can get over fossil fuels at some point, but the electric car is on its way, but it's very pricey and there's not enough places to recharge.
No.
And that's coming. It's coming. I don't know. I think in the first place, you just have to become aware.
Yeah.
Wake up to the fact that you are living on a planet of finite means, and being conscious about what you're doing. And if we could just get the big corps to do that, we'd be in a much better place. But they're collecting water. They want to sell it to you. They're even fooling around with the electric grid, so they can charge you more money for electricity when there is a way that you can have it for free. I mean, it's just very interesting how the corporations have really changed the way our lives have become.
Well, don't you think, though, or would agree with that the ideal business model is one in which everyone wins?
Yes, of course. Everyone wins. That's right. Because if you have only some people winning and other people not winning, then it's a lopsided table. It's not going to work. And I just think that we have to be more conscious, and I would like to see the big corporations, really become more responsible for their behavior instead of always chasing the money. And that's what I think, really.
Well, you call yourself a visionary teacher as well. Have you ever had any visions of the future or a future world? I mean...
Well, I think, yes, of one where people take care of themselves and they're healthy, and that does away with a lot of the drugs and the pharmaceutical industry, and taking a look at doing the things that you love to do to be happy.
Is that important? Is it doing the things you love to do, yeah?
Absolutely, because how many people are in jobs they hate?
The majority, I would say.
And then you see, they need the money, so they get a job and they take a job that they don't really want to do. And that's not helpful. But the whole economy, I don't know how it is over there, but the economy here in the United States has been not very good for the last few years. And so unless you're self-employed, a lot of people have gone into being self-employed, which is helping. But somehow we need to all begin to work together And it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. It's just a matter of being conscious of what we're doing that's not healthful for the planet, and taking care of our bodies. I think that is a big one because the healthcare system is a huge, huge business, huge, enormous.
It's the same over here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so if you can take care of yourself first, then you can stay out of that whole system. And as I say, I have no health care insurance. I lost it, and when I was married, and I'm no longer married. So I've been on this thing. Well, I'm just going to take care of myself, and I have done beautifully.
Which is
And
a
so
natural reaction to taking care of the earth as well. This is what you're saying, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. When you are conscious about what you're doing to the planet and what you're doing to take care of yourself, I mean, this is just self-awareness. This is when you begin to take responsibility for who you are, for what you put into your body, and how you behave on this planet,
Oh,
and
you,
where your consciousness lies. I do think that that's really critical. I just don't see how we can continue to screw Mother Nature for profit and not take care of ourselves.
well, you mentioned that this is really important. Taking care of yourselves. Do you think eating and living on a diet of certain fast foods is one helpful to yourself? Obviously not, but it's a direct correlation to the amount of garbage that these big corporations build up. I mean, imagine the amount of rubbish that some of these fast food takeaways produce a day, and are they being consciously led to dispose of it?
Well, I can't really answer that straightforward, but I would hope that the awareness level is increased. As I say, our Pacific Northwest is very conscious, and I would imagine that many of these corporations have had to change their ways because the public was demanding it, and they have, many of them have. I'm sure that they must have places where they recycle their wares, the things that they're not needing anymore. But I think, I mean, I was asking some of the companies, how are you treating your employees? How are you handling the recyclables? And how are you doing this and that? And one big company here, they invited me back into their offices and into their warehouses so I could see what they were doing back there. So I do think that the public's demand is one of the very strong components of getting the corporations to behave themselves and to do what's right. And if the public starts complaining, not buying the product, that's the first one. If they don't buy the product, then they're going to say, why aren't you buying the product? And disposing of what you have that's recyclable. I don't know. Do you have recyclables over there?
Oh yes, in our waste and other areas, yeah, of course,
Right.
and the garbage, the dumps as we call them, where
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
there's different places to recycle there, which were not there many years ago.
No, but I
No.
just think trying to recycle as much as you possibly can, and then being conscious of what you're buying and the packaging that it's in. As I say, a lot of these corporations have changed their ways because the public was demanding it, and that says a lot.
Do you know what? It also, Elaine, it surprised me that my friends, and some of them were only, maybe 4 years younger than me, who were very conscious on recycling, and I never would have believed that in a million years had I not seen it for myself. So there has been a shift of consciousness out there. I'm sure there has.
Yes,
But
I'm sure.
is it enough? That's is the message getting out there to enough people that this is a precious world, and if we don't take care of it, we may be going in the wrong direction in many levels.
Well, I would like to think that the consciousness is elevated. It may have stratas there, but my friends all recycle their things, so you make a big squirt about it, why that's going to happen.
Yeah. Do you give many public talks as well, Elaine?
I have, yes, over the years.
Okay. And how have you been perceived? Has it been quite positive?
Oh yes.
Mm.
Oh yes. Oh
Yeah.
yes.
Is it,
Well, as I say, people here are much more conscious.
yeah. Is that but you find now that obviously that the internet's a better voice to get your message out onto, basically.
Well, the internet, of course, that has changed our lives. There's no question about that. Yes, you can certainly do a lot of contributing to the awareness level, and there's some sites that have newsletters that are indicating their interest in that as well, and encouraging ways for people to do things differently.
Okay.
So I do think it's a good communication tool.
And do you publish any newsletters that people can get hold of, or?
I have not done it. I used to do it, but I haven't done much lately, and so maybe I'll have to start doing that again.
Is it something you might want to do on top of everything else? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well, how can people get in contact with you or see more about your? Do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website.
Okay.
And they can access it at elainesmitha.com or through evolvingideas.com.
Elaine, I'd just like to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a complete pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to have this wonderful experience with you, and you've been a very good interviewer.
Well, thank you very, very much. Well, I will get you back on for the syndication most definitely. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay, everyone. Right, well, we will link this show up for a podcast and for a videocast as well, so you better get all that on themoreshow.co.uk. Don't forget that we're back on air on Wednesday at the same time, 1 o'clock. And until then, thank you very much for joining us.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.